What's up, y'all? Shout out to the YouTube family. Shout out to everybody tapping in and watching this. I just wanted to upload a quick video, just a quick review. Not a full-length review, but just something that I've seen about They Clone Tyrone after watching a movie that I feel like nobody's really talking about. So I think that it would be cool for me to just, throw a little bit of what I saw into the atmosphere. And so as many of you may know, a movie named They Clone Tyrone came out on Netflix, I believe, just about over a week ago. And it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a good movie. I definitely appreciated some of the elements of it. A lot of elements of it, I think, warranted critique for sure. But overall, I think that the messaging is constructive, and I appreciate that they were able to bring the black exploitation element to the film, but also keep it modern, not make it seem too corny, and be comedic at the same time. I actually thought it was a little funny. I laughed a few times, I chuckled a few times. But um, what I did want to speak about is something that I found interesting. And if you've only seen it one time and you're planning on watching it again, definitely please keep this in mind. Um, One thing that I thought was very interesting about the film is, if you notice with the clones, there were only black male clones, you know? Um, well, first of all, I just had another thought. It's interesting that They Clone Tyrone and Secret Invasion comes out around the same time, because both of them kind of deal with this idea of like clones, or like there being multiple versions. When you go to the scrolls, they're impersonating people. So I think this is interesting in terms of like overall, I guess, what that messaging might be. Maybe there's a lot of cloning shit going on right now that we're not familiar with, but that's for research for another day. What I wanted to say is that with the clones, I noticed that the only clones that they had were black men, black males. You had Fontaine, who was a consistent clone. He was cloned very frequently. And then you had Slick, the pimp, right? So you had the drug dealer, and then you had the pimp, and they were cloned very consistently. And one thing I thought was interesting was that, when Fontaine looks at himself in the chamber, in the tube, and when Slick looks at himself in the tube, metaphorically, it's like, as black men, they had to come face to face with what it is that they contribute to society, or what it is that they do, what their role is as clones, as just being, manufactured to keep the neighborhood or the environment the way that it is. But what we didn't see, because the main characters are Fontaine, Slick, and Yo-Yo, who is a black female. And Kiefer Sutherland's character, when he says a hoe, a pimp, and a drug dealer walk into a bar, when he first, shows up after they leave the club and all of the zombies chase him and whatnot, he makes mention of Yo-Yo, Slick, and Fontaine. But what's interestingly left out is that when they're in the chamber, you don't see a clone of Yo-Yo, right? And I think that this is interesting because it kind of ties into like the conversation that Dr. Umar was having, um, when he was basically saying, it's black men's fault for the way that black women act, or for the issues that we face in dating black women and dealing with black women, or certain black women, not all black women, but common ideology or pathology amongst black women now, especially in the area of misandry. And I don't want to get too wordy, but basically him saying that the black man needs to take accountability. It's interesting to me because in the movie They Clone Tyrone, that's essentially what that is, where you don't see a clone of Yo-Yo, meaning they're not cloning her, meaning she's not a clone. That's another thing that I also realized when they said, when Kiefer Sutherland's character says Olympia Black, and she's like, she's not a clone, but he gets Fontaine, to subdue her. And I found that interesting for a variety of reasons, because I feel like, in a way, that was kind of like the feminist agenda rearing its head, in the sense that Black women have no accountability for anything, period, at all that takes place within the Black community. Black women essentially contribute nothing negative to the Black community. Black women do absolutely nothing wrong, and it's all just the Black man drug dealer, the Black male pimp. And that's the reason why the community is the way it is. And the other interesting part about it is when she goes to address Fontaine, when she's trying to talk to Fontaine about, and Fontaine is a funny ass name. Like, who the fuck came up with that? But all right. When she goes to address Fontaine and his lack of, I guess, revolutionary spirit, testicular fortitude, um, she's the man, like she's the revolutionary. She's with the shit. And he's just down and out, just, he's not with nothing. He's ready to just play his role in the system. And he goes on and he goes about doing that at some point in time. But I just think it's very interesting that she was the moral compass, and I think it's very interesting that there was no critique for Black women, but all of these critiques for Black men. And the last point I'll leave you with, even at the end of the video, I said the video, even at the end of the movie, if you notice, the scene before the final scene where they show the actual Tyrone and all of that, if you notice when they're on TV, and this was because I'm already watching the movie, and I'm just noticing how much of this is about Black men just being terrorists. Like when a lot of Black women or just people in general say Black men are the white people of Black people, it's like, wow, like, I'm just seeing how much of the social commentary is about how bad we are, and pathologizing us, and how bad Black men are. Fontaine and Slick are just metaphors for Black men in general in the community. And I think that that's a very problematic take, and I think it's interesting that they clone Tyrone. Whoever wrote it, who I'm going to do some more research on, I definitely want to see what that's about. And I'm sure that there's something underlying that's going to show me like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense as to why the Black woman holds no critique in this film and it's all Black men's fault. As if we don't both play a part or a role in our community, as if we're both not to be held accountable, as if we both don't contribute negative things to our culture, but it's just the Black man. Just like white people, white supremacists, and everyone else wants to demonize the Black male, but we're just in it by ourselves, right? Anyways, so that being said, one of the final scenes when all of the people are being released from the laboratories and whatnot, if you notice, just really look, if you notice, I want to say 95% of everybody that was released from the laboratories, if you guys go back, if you plan on rewatching the movie and you rewatch that movie, if you notice, about 90 to 95% of everybody that was released from the labs with an S at the end, were Black men. They were all Black males. Every single last one of them were Black males. I recall seeing about 1 to 2 Black women, and this is at the end of the movie. What they did to make you feel like the Black woman was there the whole time, though, and I see it was slick. What they did, though, in the production of it, or the writing of it, however you want to, whatever, what they did was when the anchor went up to somebody, he actually went up to a Black woman first to ask her, what's going on? What can she make of this? And she said nothing. And then he goes up to, like, I think 2 other Black men, and it's the same thing. But, with the last scene, he went up to he went up to Fontaine, or the other Fontaine, a clone of Fontaine, and then Tyrone somewhere in Cali ends up seeing it. I actually think it's a great film, because I thought that was dope, just the fact that they brought it from, like, okay, y'all think this is just going on in the South, or just going on where y'all are at. Now we take it to the West Coast. So how big is this operation? Which is the system of white supremacy? Like, it's worldwide. It's not just one state, one country, excuse me. So anyways, yeah, like, just to hit the hammer just to hammer the nail, whatever. Anyways, I know what I'm trying to say. Just to end this and land my plane, I guess what I'm trying to say is I found it very interesting that all of the clones were black men, meaning the only people that need to be recloned by the power structure of white folks so that they can continue to keep our neighborhoods the way that they are and continue to oppress us is black men, meaning it's all our fault. And I'm not one of those people that's just like, oh no, blame the black woman. Like, no, like I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those. And I'm just like, listen, like, if you want to say it's all our fault because as men, if we look at white supremacy, patriarchal society, all of that other stuff, white women are complicit as well, just as complicit, if not have been more complicit in a lot of different ways. The system wouldn't work without both genders. So if that's the case on that side, that has to be the case on our side too. So I'm not buying it. I was almost about to entertain it, but I'm not buying into this idea that black men are just the only reason why the community is the way it is, and it's just all our fault. Like, I'm sorry, as much as I fuck with Umar, that ain't it, and that's just not true, and it just doesn't work that way. And I remember him actually on Being Black with Tammy Mack on the panel that also went viral sometime last year. I remember him saying that black women actually may you can make the argument that black women have been the biggest aid to the white power structure, or the biggest cooperator with or conspirator alongside the white power structure within the community. And it's interesting that he said that last year when he was talking to Hope Giselle, the artificial woman, and then the black male hating anti-black misandrist. What's her name? I'm glad that I can barely remember her name because like she was terrible, bro. What's her name? Y'all know who I'm talking about. Y'all know who I'm talking about. What's her name? With the bang, not the bang. I forgot her name. What's her name? I'm gonna remember. It's not Kendra G. I'm gonna remember. I don't even gotta give her no clout anyway. I ain't even gonna say her name anyway. She's terrible. Um, but yeah, like I guess just to land my plane, I just think it's really interesting that all of the clones, if y'all notice, were just black men, meaning that they had no reason to be cloning black women, which I think is a very interesting statement. And I also thought it was interesting that as you're watching these black men, they're all wandering around shirtless, and just not even shirtless, naked, like butt naked. All of these black, and I can think of it like on a production level. Maybe they're like, yo, listen, it would cost more just to censor or bleep out the titties of black women, because if they're released, then they're gonna be naked, and it's easier to just have men be naked than to have women be naked. Like, I guess I can see that, but and I guess if you're trying to say like we don't want this to be some negative shit, so we're not gonna show black women with their titties out or asses out or butt naked. But I'm just like, even if that's the critique, so it's okay to show black men, and that's Delectable Negro. Shout out Tia Son Johnson, the Institute for Black Male Studies. Shout out the Man Not, Tommy J. Curry. Like, that's an instance where black men, it's like y'all not even worth being censored. Like, y'all ain't even worth us protecting y'all enough to, yes, we're not going to show the black women walking around just wandering because they were released and they're all butt naked with their titties out. Like, we're not going to show y'all that because we have so much respect for black women and we respect them more and we want to protect black women. But we will show you them black men walking around butt naked, looking crazy, looking bewildered, and just like, part of me is like, you can make the argument that that falls under buck breaking in a certain sense. I think that you can make the argument that that falls under dehumanization to a certain degree. Like, think about, as black men, we're watching this film, as black boys, you're watching this film, and that's what you're seeing. So that's all I wanted to say about the film. And yeah, I hope you guys go enjoy it. And let me know, please, in the comments how you guys feel about what my perspective on the movie is. And whether or not you agree, disagree, if you saw any similarities, if you saw something else that relates to what I said or doesn't, or if something else popped out that you found interesting. But that's what I found interesting, and I just wanted to share that because I feel like that just for something that we're promoting as constructive slash positive, um, for it to have elements in it that are very negative, especially at a subconscious level, I think that then begs the question of how positive is this really if there's subliminal messaging that you're going to intake that will now define the way that you perceive the men in your community who are supposed to be your leaders. So the dog is wilding out. I'm going to let y'all go. Peace.